There's a question that lives quietly inside almost everyone, though most people never say it out loud. It does not announce itself with urgency or drama. It arrives in the small spaces between tasks, in the silence after a long day, in the moment just before sleep finally comes. It whispers something like this. Is this it? Is this what happiness is supposed to feel like? Because if so, why does it still feel so far away? You work, you plan, you move from one thing to the next with a kind of efficiency that modern life demands and rewards. And somewhere in the middle of all that movement, you find yourself waiting. Waiting for the weekend, for the promotion, for the relationship to settle, for the anxiety to lift, for life to finally arrive at the place where it feels the way you always imagined it would. But the arrival never quite comes, and the waiting continues, and underneath the waiting, very quietly, something begins to ache. This is not a personal failing. This is not evidence that something is wrong with you, or that you are doing life incorrectly. This is the oldest and most human of struggles, the mind that cannot stop reaching for what is not yet here, the heart that has been taught to believe that happiness lives somewhere ahead, just past the next achievement, just beyond the next improvement, just on the other side of the next version of yourself that you are still working to become. You are not alone in this. The weight of that particular kind of waiting is something almost every person carries quietly, beneath the surface of a life that looks from the outside like it should be enough. But here is what no one tells you clearly enough. Happiness is not a destination. It is not a reward waiting at the finish line of your striving. It is not something you will finally unlock when the conditions of your life arrange themselves into the perfect configuration. Buddhist wisdom has been saying this for thousands of years, and the mind keeps forgetting it, because the mind is very good at convincing itself that this time, this next thing, this particular achievement will be the one that finally delivers what all the others did not. The mind is persistent, but the wisdom is patient. What you're about to discover is not a set of rules. It is not a performance standard. It is not another list of things you must accomplish in order to deserve peace. These are 6 gentle invitations, and small, practical, and deeply human, to meet your life differently, not to change it entirely, not to fix what is broken, simply to arrive inside it more fully than you have been allowing yourself to. And if something in you is already tired of waiting for happiness to show up on its own terms, if something in you is ready to stop postponing the quiet joy that this ordinary life already contains, then stay with these words a little longer. Let them settle. If this kind of reflection feels like something you want to return to, consider subscribing so that more of these teachings find their way to you when you need them most. The first invitation begins before you reach for anything. Before the phone, before the news, before the mental checklist of everything that needs to be fixed or finished or improved today. Before all of that, there is a single practice that can quietly restructure the emotional foundation of your entire morning. It is this: notice what is already enough. This sounds almost embarrassingly simple, and the mind, trained as it is on complexity and effort, will resist it. The mind wants to say that noticing what is enough is complacency, that it is settling, that the moment you stop scanning for what is missing, you will fall behind, grow stagnant, lose your edge. But Buddhist wisdom makes a careful distinction here, one that is worth sitting with. Contentment is not complacency. Contentment is clarity. It is the ability to see with clear and honest eyes that while your life may not be perfect, it is already carrying value that you have not yet fully acknowledged. The practice is not complicated. Before you stand up in the morning, before the day begins telling you all the ways it needs you, take 60 seconds and ask yourself one question. What is already here that is supporting me? Not what is impressive, not what you would post about, simply what is real and present and sustaining you right now. Maybe it is breath in your lungs. Maybe it is a body that carried you through yesterday. Maybe it is one person somewhere who would notice if you disappeared. Maybe it is the quiet of the room before the noise begins. The Buddha taught that craving the Kaussaumstauet die Muste, the constant movement of the mind toward what it does not yet have, is the root of dissatisfaction, not because wanting things is wrong, but because a mind that is always reaching cannot rest, and without rest, even beautiful moments pass unnoticed like light moving through a room that no one is sitting in. When you begin the day by noticing sufficiency instead of scanning for lack, something shifts in the body before it shifts in the mind. The shoulders drop a fraction, the jaw unclenches slightly. The breath deepens without any effort on your part. You are not forcing positivity. You are simply expanding your awareness to include what is stable alongside what is uncertain. And that small expansion, practiced daily, gradually reshapes your emotional baseline. Life begins to feel less like something you are behind on and more like something you are actually living. The second invitation asks you to do something that modern life has made almost culturally suspicious. Stop. Just stop. Not at the end of the day when you have earned it. Not on the weekend when you have permission. In the middle. Right in the thick of it. When things are moving and demands are stacking and the momentum of productivity is pulling you forward. Stop for 60 seconds. Most people move through their days on a kind of autopilot that feels like efficiency, but is actually a slow accumulation of disconnection. You respond to messages without registering who sent them. You eat lunch while reading something else. You walk from one room to another and arrive without any memory of the movement. The mind is always 3 steps ahead of the body, which means the body is always living in a moment the mind has already abandoned. And this quiet fracture between where you are and where your attention is creates a specific kind of exhaustion. One that sleep does not fully repair because it is not physical. It is the exhaustion of a life being experienced at a distance. The mindful pause is not meditation. It does not require a cushion, a timer, or any particular state of mind. It requires only this. When the moment arrives, and you can choose any moment after a meeting, before a meal, standing at the sink, you feel your feet on the floor. You notice the temperature of the air. You take one breath that you are actually present for. You ask yourself, honestly and without performance, how am I really right now? Not the version you would describe to a colleague. The honest one. You may find tension, you may find fatigue, you may find something small and unexpected like relief or a flicker of something quiet that might be contentment. All of it is welcome. None of it needs to be fixed in that 60 seconds. It only needs to be seen, and being seen, even by yourself, even briefly, interrupts the accumulation. It reminds the nervous system that you're allowed to exist between tasks, not only during them. Over time, this habit trains something subtle and profound. The ability to notice your own experience before it becomes overwhelming. And that noticing is where real emotional resilience begins. The third invitation asks you to make a shift that is more internal than behavioral. It is a shift in where you place the center of your happiness. For most of your life, you have probably been taught quietly, persistently by culture and advertising and the general atmosphere of ambition that happiness grows from acquiring a better phone, a better title, a better body, a better version of yourself. And for a moment, each acquisition brings something real, a lift, a spark, a brief sense of progress. But it fades, not because you're ungrateful, not because you're doing it wrong, because possessions were never designed to hold lasting joy. Everything material changes, breaks, becomes outdated, gets replaced. When your happiness is tethered too tightly to what you own, it rises and falls with circumstance, which means it is never truly yours. The practice is this. Instead of asking, what can I get today, begin asking, what can I experience fully today? While drinking your morning coffee, instead of checking your phone, pause long enough to actually taste it. Notice the warmth in your hands. Notice the particular quality of light in the room at that hour. When someone is speaking to you, give them your attention without already composing your response. When you walk outside, let the sky be more than background scenery. These are not grand gestures, they are small acts of presence that transform the ordinary into something quietly extraordinary. Impermanence, the Buddha taught, is not a threat, it is an invitation, because everything changes this moment, this exact configuration of light and sound and sensation will never repeat itself in quite the same way. When you understand that deeply, possessions lose some of their grip. They become useful, enjoyable even, but they are no longer the foundation of your emotional life. And comparison, which is one of the great thieves of joy in a culture saturated with images of other people's lives, begins to loosen its hold. Your quiet cup of coffee is complete in itself. Your conversation is meaningful because you were present for it. Joy does not require more. It requires attention. And attention, unlike money or status, is always available. The fourth invitation arrives at the end of the day, in the space between what happened and what sleep will bring. It is perhaps the most quietly powerful of all six, because it addresses something most people do not even realize they are doing, carrying yesterday into tomorrow. The mind is a faithful record keeper. It stores the sharp words exchanged in the afternoon, the mistake made in the meeting, the moment you were less patient than you wanted to be, the small humiliation that is somehow still sharp 3 hours later. And without any conscious decision, you carry all of it into the next day and the day after that, until the accumulated weight of undischarged experience becomes a heaviness that you have simply accepted as the feeling of being alive. This is not inevitable. This is a habit, and like any habit, it can be gently interrupted. Before you sleep, take a few minutes to do something simple. Review the day, not to analyze it endlessly, not to solve it, but simply to acknowledge what felt heavy. Then, and this is the practice, place a quiet boundary around it. Say to yourself without drama and without suppression, this happened, it cannot be undone. I choose not to carry it into tomorrow. This is not denial, it is not spiritual bypassing. It is a conscious act of releasing your grip on what is already finished. Buddhist wisdom teaches that clinging, the replaying, the justifying, the resisting is what prolongs suffering. Events occur, emotions arise. But when you stop tightening around what has already passed, it begins to lose its hold. You're not your worst moment of today. You are not permanently defined by a single reaction or a single conversation. Everything changes. That includes you. When you practice this release consistently, something changes in the quality of your sleep and in the quality of your mornings. You wake with a slightly cleaner slate. Less residue from the day before. More space for what today is actually bringing. The fifth invitation is perhaps the most personal, because it addresses the voice that follows you everywhere, the one that speaks in the quiet between activities, the one that comments on every mistake, that compares you to an imagined standard you never quite meet, that reminds you of what you should have done differently. For many people, this inner voice is not gentle, it is sharp, impatient, and absolute. And it has been speaking for so long that it has come to feel like truth rather than habit. Here is something worth sitting with. You would never speak to someone you love the way you speak to yourself when you fall short. If a close friend made a mistake, forgot something important, said the wrong thing in a difficult moment, you would not say to them, "You always do this. You will never change. You are not enough." You would say, "It is okay. You're learning. You are doing your best." That same kindness, steady, honest, without exaggeration in either direction, is available to you. Not as indulgence, not as an excuse to avoid growth, but as the emotional climate in which real growth actually becomes possible. The practice is noticing your tone. Throughout the day, when frustration or failure appears, pause and listen to how you're speaking to yourself. Is the voice sharp? Is it catastrophizing? Is it using words like always and never and not enough? When you catch it, do not judge the judgment, that only adds another layer. Simply soften it, replace. I am terrible at this, with this is genuinely difficult and I am still learning. Replace I always fail with. This did not go the way I hoped, and that does not define me. These replacements feel artificial at first. That is natural. Kindness toward oneself feels unfamiliar when self-criticism has been the default for years. But unfamiliar does not mean untrue. According to Buddhist teaching, suffering deepens when we identify too completely with passing thoughts. A self-critical thought is still just a thought. It arises, it passes, it is not your identity. When you respond to your own struggle with compassion rather than condemnation, you interrupt the cycle of shame that quietly prevents so much happiness from taking root. Compassion does not lower your standards. It creates the safety in which genuine change becomes possible. And a life lived under gentle internal encouragement feels, in time, fundamentally different from a life lived under constant internal pressure. If this way of meeting yourself honestly, kindly, without the performance of perfection, feels like something worth continuing to explore, consider subscribing for more of these teachings as you find your way back to your own warmth. The sixth and final invitation turns your attention outward, but not in the way you might expect. This is not about grand philanthropy or visible service, where it is about something much smaller and, in many ways, much more powerful. One quiet act of genuine kindness each day, not for recognition, not to build an identity around being a good person, simply because you can and because something in you already knows that this is one of the places where real joy lives. Much of modern unhappiness is rooted in a kind of isolation that has nothing to do with being physically alone. You can be surrounded by people and still feel fundamentally separate, unseen, disconnected, like your inner experience and the world around you are running on parallel tracks that never quite meet. This feeling is one of the most painful things a person can carry, and one of the least discussed. What Buddhist wisdom understands and what research in human psychology confirms is that the quickest way out of self-centered suffering is not more focus on the self, but a genuine movement of attention outward. When the mind is entirely occupied with its own concerns, those concerns expand to fill every available space. They feel total, permanent, defining, but when you extend genuine care toward another person, hold the door, send the message that says, "I was thinking of you," listen without already planning your response, offer patience when someone is slow or struggling, the perspective shifts. Your difficulties remain real, but they are no longer the entire story. There is also this. Another person carrying their own invisible weight and you choosing to make their moment slightly lighter. Notice how you feel after an act of genuine, unperformed kindness. There's often a softness in the chest, a quiet warmth that does not spike and crash the way external validation does. It simply hums there, steady and sustaining. That feeling is what sustainable happiness actually feels like. Not the loud brightness of excitement, but the deep okayness of knowing you are woven into something larger than your own concerns. You begin, gradually, to ask different questions of your days. Not what am I getting from life, but what am I contributing to it? Not how do I appear, but how do people feel when they leave my presence? These questions carry a kind of dignity that no achievement can replicate, because they are not about performance. They are about genuine connection, and connection, real, quiet, unspectacular human connection, is one of the deepest and most durable sources of joy that exists. These 6 habits are not a curriculum to master. They are not a standard against which you measure your daily success or failure. They are invitations offered gently to be taken up as lightly as you need to take them. Some mornings you will notice sufficiency and feel genuinely moved by it. Other mornings, you will reach for your phone before you remember. Some days, the mindful pause will feel like a small revolution. Other days, it will feel like an afterthought you barely managed. Some evenings, the letting go will arrive naturally. Others, the mind will cling and replay and refuse to release its grip on the day. All of this is part of the practice. The practice is not perfection. The practice is returning again and again with as much gentleness as you can manage, returning to the breath, to the present moment. Not to the quiet truth that your life This ordinary, imperfect, still unfolding life already holds more than you have been allowing yourself to see. Happiness is not waiting somewhere ahead of you. It is not the reward for becoming a better version of yourself. It is here in the texture of this day, in the quality of your attention, in the small and steady choices you make about how to meet what is already in front of you. May you find it there, not all at once, but breath by breath, moment by moment, in the gentle and accumulating practice of being fully alive to your own life. And if these words have offered you even one moment of that quiet recognition, stay close, subscribe, and let more of this wisdom find you when you need it most.